When Leo Mercer inherited a remote Pacific island from his eccentric uncle, he thought it was just another useless asset in a portfolio full of them. He never imagined that while he was distracted by a messy divorce and failing tech startup 3,000 miles away, the Harbor Oaks Homeowners Association would somehow mistake his island for their new development property, complete with survey stakes, construction crews and 55 identical suburban houses now lining what were once pristine beaches. Leo Mercer first saw the photographs from a drone he'd purchased on a whim. The divorce settlement had been finalized a week prior, stripping him of the Bel Air mansion but leaving him with what his lawyer called the non-liquid curiosities, a vintage car that didn't run, a crate of worthless mining stock and Coral Cay. The island was a teardrop of green and white in the North Pacific, 120 acres of rugged cliffs, a sheltered lagoon and a ribbon of sand beach. His uncle Silas, an explorer with more money than sense, had bought it in the 1970s. Leo had visited once as a sullen teenager, remembering only mosquitoes and boredom. In the drone's live feed, however, he saw symmetry where chaos should be. Neat lines of rooftops. Beige siding. Perfectly rectangular lawns of fresh sod laid like carpet over the native ferns. A street light. He blinked, refreshed the connection and flew the drone lower. He counted 20 houses, then 30, then more. They were clustered around the lagoon, a ghastly mirror of Harbor Oaks, the gated community in Washington state where he'd lived with his ex-wife. He recognized the architectural style, the Cascade model, with its faux craftsman detailing and three-season porches. "This is impossible," he whispered to the empty condo. But the timestamp was current, the coordinates correct. His island, which he'd checked on via satellite imagery just 8 months before, had been colonized. The next 48 hours were a blur of frantic calls. The county records office insisted Coral Cay was still registered to Mercer Leo J., with no permits filed. The Coast Guard was politely baffled. The FBI said it sounded like a civil matter. It was only when he called the Harbor Oaks HOA management office, pretending to be a potential buyer, that he got an answer. "Oh, the Coral Cay project," chirped the assistant. "Phase 1 is complete and occupied. It's our exclusive offshore residential community. A trial run for sustainable, sovereign living. All HOA members in good standing were given the opportunity to purchase." "Occupied." Leo's voice cracked. "Ah. The ferry from Anacortes runs twice a month. It's been wonderful. Very tight-knit." Leo booked the next flight to Seattle. He didn't call the police until he was standing on the deck of a chartered fishing boat, the Wanderlust, staring through binoculars at the monstrosity his island had become. The houses were not just built, they were lived in. He saw a woman watering petunias in a deck planter. A man in khakis retrieving mail from a cluster of identical black boxes. A child's bicycle lay on its side on a paved walking path. The jungle had been pushed back, replaced by bark mulch and juvenile maple trees. "That's my land," Leo said to Sheriff Ed Darrow, a weary man with a thick mustache, as their boat approached the new dock. A sturdy, professionally built affair with a "Welcome to Coral Cay, a Harbor Oaks community" sign. "You're sure there's no easement? No partnership with your uncle's estate?" Darrow asked, already sounding defeated. "I'm sure. My uncle hated neighbors. He called suburbs the death of the human spirit." As they tied up, a golf cart approached, driven by a man in a polo shirt with a logo. Gary Finch, president of the Harbor Oaks HOA, beamed as if greeting prospective members. "Sheriff, welcome. And you must be Leo. We've been expecting you." Leo's blood ran cold. "You've been expecting me?" "Of course. We knew the rightful owner would show up eventually. We have a proposition for you." What unfolded was not a confrontation, but a meeting in the HOA's community clubhouse, a building that sat where Leo remembered a sea lion rookery. Gary, flanked by a steely-eyed lawyer named Brenda and several board members, laid out their staggering case. They admitted, made an administrative error. A cartographic mix-up. An LLC named Coral Cay Holdings, which they believed was a shell company selling developed islands, had been confused with Leo's actual deed. They'd purchased the development rights from a forger for $1. They'd invested millions of their members' money. The 55 families living here were not squatters. They were bona fide purchasers, having each paid nearly $1 million for their slice of island paradise. They had surveys, fake, deeds, forged, and the unshakable belief that they belonged here. "We're not leaving, Mr. Mercer," Brenda stated flatly. "The legal battle to remove us would take a decade and cost you millions. We have resources and community spirit." "You stole my island," Leo said, his voice trembling. "We improved it," Gary corrected, smiling. "Look at the infrastructure. Septic, solar farm, desalination plant. We've increased the value exponentially. We want to make you a partner. Sign over the land to the HOA, and we'll give you a generous finder's fee. One of the Lagoon View lots. And a seat on the board." Leo looked from their placid, confident faces to Sheriff Darrow, who shrugged helplessly. "It's a title dispute, Leo. It's way out of my lane." The police left. Leo was shown to a guest bungalow, one of the houses furnished in bland hotel style. That night, lying in a bed that wasn't his in a house that shouldn't exist, on land that was his, Leo made a decision. He wouldn't sue. He wouldn't negotiate. He would take it back. His first forays were pathetic. He tried to shut off the water at the main. A retired plumber named Doug simply turned it back on, giving Leo a pitying look. He stood on the beach with a megaphone declaring the residents trespassers. They brought him lemonade and asked if he needed help with the stressor of his situation. He was treated not as an enemy but as a nuisance, a slightly unhinged relative who needed humoring. The HOA's control was absolute. They had their own rules enforced with cheerful ferocity. Fines for unapproved paint colors, for leaving garbage cans out past 9, for excessive noise, which now included Leo's protests. He found a notice on his door, violation, unauthorized negative signage, handwritten, "You are trespassing" placard. Fine, $250. Please remit to the management office. He was trapped in a nightmare of passive-aggressive suburbia, superimposed on his own personal wilderness. The breakthrough came from the island itself, and from the ghost of his uncle. Exploring a cliff face on the northern undeveloped side, Leo found the entrance to Silas's old storm shelter, a concrete bunker dug into the rock. Inside, amid dusty crates of expedition gear, was Silas's library, leather-bound journals, topographical maps, and geological surveys. One survey, commissioned in the 1980s, had a red stamp: Geothermal anomaly detected, Sector 4. Sector 4 was under the lagoon. Under the HOA's prized waterfront properties. An idea, terrible and perfect, began to form. Leo wasn't a fighter, but he was a programmer. He understood systems, pressure points, and unintended consequences. The HOA was a system, one that believed it had conquered nature, sanitized it, and regulated it into submission. Leo would remind them who was really in charge. He spent weeks being the model, if sullen, resident. He paid his fictitious fines. He attended the painfully cheerful island mixer. He learned their system. Their water came from a desalination plant powered by the solar farm, but the critical pump controllers and the internet router for their security system, cameras on every street, were in a utility shed behind the clubhouse. Their society ran on Wi-Fi and water pressure. Meanwhile, using his uncle's maps and a stolen key to the HOA survey office, he located the old geothermal test boreholes. One, conveniently, was in a maintenance closet in the clubhouse basement, covered by a metal plate. The HOA's annual Founders' Day Luau was the biggest event of the season. All 55 households would be at the lagoon beach for a pig roast and awards ceremony. It was the perfect time. As the sun set and tiki torches were lit, Leo slipped into the clubhouse basement. He opened the borehole cover. Using a modified car battery and parts from his uncle's old seismic equipment, he rigged a simple device, not to explode but to vibrate. To send a deep, resonant frequency down into the rock, targeting the unstable geothermal pocket beneath the lagoon. Upstairs, he accessed the utility panel. He didn't cut the power. He reprogrammed it. He synced the water pump cycles to randomize, and set the security cameras to loop yesterday's uneventful footage. He inserted a single line of code into their community internet network, a repeating audio file too low to consciously hear, of his Uncle Silas's favorite recording, the eerie wailing song of a humpback whale. Then he took a lawn chair to the highest point on the island, a rocky outcrop above the cliffs, and waited. It started subtly. The water pressure in the beer keg taps suddenly sputtered, then shot a jet of foam. The streetlights flickered in a strange, rhythmic pattern. A low, subsonic hum seemed to emanate from the ground itself, setting teeth on edge. Parents clutched fussing children. The festive music from the speakers warped, the whale song bleeding through beneath the ukulele tunes. Then the ground moved. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a prolonged rolling shudder, as if the island were groaning. Plates rattled off picnic tables. The lagoon waters, usually placid, began to bubble and churn, emitting a sulfurous smell. Panic, so long suppressed by HOA rules and order, broke out. Golf carts were summoned in a frantic exodus from the beach. But the chaos was just beginning. With the cameras looped, Leo's final act went unseen. From his vantage point, he used a high-powered laser pointer, aimed at the main power coupling for the solar farm's battery bank. A quick overheat, a pop, and the backup generators, which powered the pumps and Wi-Fi, kicked on. He'd reprogrammed them too. They would run for precisely 12 hours, then die. All at once. The next morning, Coral Cay was a different place. The water was a trickle. The toilets didn't flush. There was no internet, no security cameras, no lights. The generators had failed as predicted. The stores of food in sophisticated smart fridges began to spoil. The bottled water supply, reliant on an electric pump from the storage cistern, was inaccessible. More unsettling were the natural phenomena. The whale song still played on a subconscious loop from hidden speakers Leo had wired into the ventilation ducts. The sulfur smell from the lagoon wouldn't disperse. And small, programmed tremors, triggered by his device still pulsing deep below, shook the houses at random intervals, just enough to crack drywall and rattle nerves. Gary Finch appeared at Leo's door, his confidence shattered. "What's happening? The mechanics can't fix it. The systems they're fighting us." Leo sipped his coffee brewed on a camp stove. "My uncle always said this island had a spirit. Maybe it doesn't like being paved over." Desperation set in. The tight-knit community unraveled. Doug the plumber argued with an engineer about the pumps. A fight broke out over the last gallon of milk at the community store. The HOA board tried to impose martial law, but their authority, derived from comfort and convenience, evaporated in the face of malfunctioning garbage disposals and silent televisions. After 3 days, a delegation arrived at Leo's Rock. They were haggard. The illusion of their sovereign paradise was broken. "What do you want?" Brenda the lawyer asked, all pretense gone. "I want you to understand that this is my land," Leo said quietly. "You built your houses on a foundation of a forgery. Now you're living on a foundation of sand and geothermal instability. My uncle's surveys say this whole lagoon area could become volatile." It was a bluff, but they believed it. The ground hadn't stopped trembling. "We'll leave," Gary whispered, defeated. "We'll organize the ferry. But the houses, our investment." "The houses stay," Leo said. "You built them without my permission. They're now fixtures on my property." "What? You can take your personal belongings. You have 1 week." The evacuation of Coral Cay was a surreal reverse D-Day. Grim-faced families loaded golf carts with suitcases and televisions, queuing for the ferry back to a mainland they now found alien. They left behind their perfect houses, their sod lawns already browning, their petunias wilting. Leo watched the last ferry disappear over the horizon. He was alone. He descended from his rock and walked the silent streets. He entered the clubhouse, shut down his equipment and silenced the whale song. The island's natural sounds rushed back in, the wind, the waves, the cries of gulls. He stood on the beach, the strange geometry of the houses at his back. He had won. He had reclaimed his inheritance by weaponizing the very thing the HOA had tried to erase, the wild, untamed, unpredictable nature of the place. 1 year later, a different ferry approached Coral Cay. Aboard were artists, scientists, and conservationists, vetted tenants recruited by Leo. The Coral Cay Research Station and Creative Retreat was now a reality. The houses, stripped of their beige siding and repainted in vibrant colors, served as labs, studios, and lodgings. The HOA's infrastructure, once a tool of control, now powered a different kind of community. Leo, sitting on the deck of the old clubhouse, now a library, watched a sea lion haul out onto the new dock. He smiled. The invaders were gone. Their houses remained, but the island had absorbed them, like sea glass tumbled smooth by the waves. He had not just won back his land. He had transformed their monument to conformity into a fortress for the unconventional, forever guarding against the next wave of people who might mistake a wild place for a blank slate.